The air hung heavy with the stench of ozone and burnt metal. Ryker squinted through the haze, the flickering emergency lights casting long shadows that danced across the wreckage of the Starfarer's bridge. Twisted metal groaned like a wounded beast. Consoles were reduced to glowing shards, and the once pristine white walls were now smeared with crimson ichor, a grim testament to the battle they'd just fought. "Captain Kai?" Ryker called out, his voice hoarse, echoing through the hollow chamber. "Are you—" His words choked off as he saw Kai slumped against the navigation console, her armor cracked and dented, blood pooling beneath her where she lay. He scrambled towards her, fear gripping his heart like a vice. "Kai, hold on!" Ryker knelt beside her, checking for a pulse. Weak, but there. A tremor ran through her chest as a shallow breath escaped her lips. Relief flooded him, followed quickly by anger. Who had inflicted this upon her? A series of chirps and whistles alerted him to the comm system struggling back online. He fumbled with the controls, desperate for any word, any contact beyond the silent groans of their dying ship. A crackly voice finally filled the bridge, strained but familiar. "Ryker, what? Report!" It was Xe'lar, their navigator, his voice laced with static and urgency. "Captain Kai is wounded," Ryker reported succinctly. "Damage to the Starfarer is catastrophic. We're barely holding on." He glanced at the swirling nebula outside, a treacherous kaleidoscope of colors obscuring the stars beyond. "We need extraction, Xe'lar. Now." Xylar's reply crackled with static, each word hard-earned. "Starfleet channels are down. Pirates jammed our signal, the Codex." His voice trailed off abruptly, leaving Ryker hanging on his next words. The silence stretched, heavy and unbearable, before a single chilling phrase cut through the comms. "They have it, Ryker. They have the Codex." Riker's blood ran cold. The legendary stellar Codex, said to hold the secrets of manipulating stellar energy, of rewriting the fabric of reality itself, now lay in the hands of pirates. He glanced back at Kai, her breathing shallow and ragged. The fate of their universe, of everything, rested on their survival. He had a choice: succumb to the overwhelming darkness enveloping them, or fight. Fight for his captain, fight for their ship, fight for every last scrap of hope. "We're not done, Xe'lar," Ryker declared, his voice determined despite the tremble in his hands. Not by a long shot. He reached out and checked Kai's pulse, feeling the faint flicker beneath her skin. "Let's find those pirates." "We're still limping along. Barely," Xe'lar reported, his voice tight with concern crackling faintly from the comms. Outside their viewport, the swirling nebula was a hypnotic mix of cosmic dust and incandescent gas, but Ryker could only focus on Kai's shallow breaths. He pressed a cooling gel pad against her temple, trying to stem the internal bleeding that had opened beneath her armor. "I can access emergency transponders," he said, updating Xe'lar. "Hopefully someone picks up our distress signal." It felt like shouting into a void. Starfleet was down. Even civilian channels were jammed with static interference. The pirates clearly wanted to keep this operation under wraps. "Hold tight, Captain," Xe'lar rasped. "There's a backdoor protocol on the comms array. Risky, but it might get us through." He described a labyrinthine series of access codes and frequency shifts, his voice calm yet urgent. Ryker punched in the keys, praying for a connection. The hum of the starship engine was the only response, accompanied by the low thrumming heartbeat of Kai. She stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. "Ryker?" Her voice was weak, laced with pain but filled with defiance. "What happened?" "It's a long story," Ryker said, suppressing his own exhaustion alongside his fierce protectiveness. "Let's just say we're in a bit of a pickle." His gaze drifted to the damage report flickering on the primary console. Critical systems overloaded, life support compromised, and worse. The Codex was gone, stolen by pirates who, judging by their ruthless efficiency, meant to reshape reality according to their own twisted desires. "The Codex," Kai whispered, her grip on his arm tightening. "We can't let them get away with it." "I know, Captain," Ryker said, a familiar tightness in his chest at the sight of her pain. "That's why I'm doing everything in my power to bring those bastards down." The comms crackled back to life. Xe'lar announced excitedly, "Static bust-in protocol worked. There's one open channel, an independent freighter registered as—" Before he could finish, a voice with thick, gravelly laughter interrupted them, laced with barely veiled menace. Well," the voice rasped. Looks like we caught ourselves a couple of stragglers. A metallic click resonated through the speakers alongside the sound of static crackling, followed by the chillingly calm statement. And now, dear Captain, your little game is about to end. The laughter died in an echoing silence, leaving behind a prickling unease that settled like ice in Riker's veins. He glanced at Kai, her brow furrowed as she struggled to focus despite the throbbing pain radiating from her wound. A grim satisfaction bloomed within him. Even wounded, her spirit remained resilient. "We have company," Xe'lar confirmed, his voice stripped of its usual optimism. The static on the comms momentarily subsided as a new voice chimed in, raspy, cultured with a hint of something predatory lurking beneath. "Captain Ryker, I presume?" the voice purred. "Don't fret about your little injury. We've had word you're quite fond of theatrics. A grand performance always pleases the audience." A low chuckle reverberated through the comms, sending a shiver down their spines. Ryker fought the urge to respond immediately, needing to assess his options. They were outmatched, wounded, and clinging to hope like a lifeline in a storm. "Who are you?" he finally asked, his voice deliberately calm, a shield against the rising panic. "Why, that's hardly important, is it? Names can be so mundane." The voice swirled with amusement. "Suffice to say, we appreciate your contributions." The air crackled again with static before a metallic clang echoed through their speakers. Ryker instantly understood. They were being boarded. He barked out orders to Xe'lar. "Boost our defenses. Scramble every remaining shield sequence. Get Kai to the medbay. Now." "Working on it, Captain," Xe'lar responded, his voice strained as alarms blared throughout the bridge. Ryker moved with practiced speed, activating manual override protocols and engaging countermeasures against the incoming enemy craft. The hull of the damaged ship groaned under the onslaught as fire-streaked torpedoes ripped through their remaining defenses. He caught Kai's eye as she stumbled towards the dimly lit corridor leading to the medbay. Her face was a mask of pain, determination etched on her features. He couldn't allow those vile pirates to take victory from them, not while she still fought, while hope endured. "Fight for us, Captain," he whispered, his voice raw with urgency. She met his gaze, a flicker of defiance burning bright in her wounded eyes. "Always, Ryker." The battle raged around them as the pirates stormed their ship. Each thudding footstep resonated through the corridors like a death knell, each explosion a testament to their relentless assault. But despite their battered hull and dwindling defenses, Ryker wouldn't surrender. He would fight for his crew, for Kai, for every shred of honor left within him. The fate of their universe hung in the balance. The voice oozed through the comms like venom, a constant reminder of their predicament. "How quaint," it purred, as Ryker scrambled to reroute power, barely keeping the ship from becoming a flaming wreck. "Firing on your own systems? Such melodrama." The laughter crackled across the frequencies, each burst a jagged shard piercing the desperate tension clinging to every surface of the bridge. Ryker barked back, his voice ragged but laced with defiance. "What do you want from us?" His gamble had been a risky one, broadcasting their distress, hoping it might attract a friendly response. Clearly, he'd miscalculated. "Perhaps," the voice drawled, "a little audience participation isn't that interesting? After all," it continued, lowering its tone to something almost seductive, "you've shown such resilience." Through the comms, they could hear the scraping of metal against metal, echoing closer with each passing second. The pirates were breaching. "Captain!" Xe'lar's voice was a frantic scramble through static, cut off by a sharp, metallic clang. The lights flickered erratically, casting long, grotesque shadows across the bridge. Ryker spun toward Xe'lar, who frantically worked at his station, cursing under his breath. "Sensors are fried, Captain," he yelled. "Can't tell what they're bringing on board, but it's heavy and moving fast." Ryker felt a cold dread settle over him. They were vulnerable, trapped in their crippled ship with scavengers who reveled in chaos. He had to buy time for Xe'lar to rebuild some kind of defense, time for Kai. His thoughts were interrupted by a jarring boom resonating through the hull, sending them both tumbling. He scrambled back to his feet, ignoring the roar in his ears and the sting of pain lancing through his arm. "They're breaching main access," Xe'lar yelled, his voice choked with fear. "Help us." Ryker knew there was no time left for pleas, only action. He threw a heavy object across the bridge, attempting to slow their attackers as he barked orders at Xe'lar. Get me a secure frequency. Anything that can alert. A deafening crash shattered his words, sending debris flying through the air. The pirates had breached the main bridge, and they were upon them in an instant. The stench of burnt ozone and acrid smoke filled the air as Ryker met the pirate captain's gaze. A towering brute clad in black armor, with mandibles that twitched like predatory insects, he reeked of danger and greed. He brandished a wickedly curved blade that pulsed with an eerie crimson light. Ryker, the pirate rasped through a modulated voice box. Your reputation precedes you. They said a captain worthy, even in defeat. He grinned, revealing sharp teeth glinting like chips of obsidian. But legends are easier to break than bones. Before Ryker could respond, a second figure stepped forward from behind the imposing captain. A lean woman with eyes as cold and hard as polished steel. Her armor was sleek and minimalist, augmented with glowing circuitry that hummed faintly. He speaks truthfully, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. The Codex is a powerful tool, and now it will be ours. She gestured at the carnage behind them. Xe'lar's lifeless form splayed across his console, his eyes wide and vacant. Ryker's blood ran cold. His voice trembled as he rasped out a question. What have you done with my crew? The pirate captain chortled. They fought bravely, he said, wiping his blade on Xe'lar's uniform, a splatter of crimson marking the black fabric. But brave fools are easy to conquer. He shifted his gaze back to Ryker, amusement flickering in his reptilian eyes. Now tell us, where is it? Ryker knew they wouldn't get anything out of him through force. He had to buy time. Kai, had she... No, he couldn't dwell on the worst-case scenario. Hope, however slim, kept him going. The Codex? He feigned confusion. I'm unaware of what you speak. The pirate captain stepped closer, his blade whistling through the air as it grazed Ryker's cheek. Don't play games with us, he hissed. We know you possess valuable secrets, and your loyalty to this pathetic little vessel speaks volumes. He gestured at the ravaged bridge. This ship is about to become a tomb, unless you cooperate. Ryker swallowed hard, forcing his fear down. I assure you, I have nothing to do with any alleged codex you speak of. His eyes darted around the wreckage, searching for anything that could be used as a weapon. A stray length of cable caught his eye. He grabbed it, tightening his grip until his knuckles turned white. Perhaps, he said, his voice low and dangerous, you should reconsider your approach. The tension crackled in the air like a live wire. The pirate captain sneered. So we're playing games now, are we? The pirate captain's mandibles twitched with barely controlled rage. So you dare defy us? He snarled, taking a menacing step closer, his blades humming with an ominous thrum. Ryker held his ground, the frayed cable clutched like a lifeline. His heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. He couldn't let them see his fear. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, he said, his voice tight with controlled fury. The woman clad in sleek armor stepped forward, her eyes scanning Ryker like a predator assessing its prey. Her gaze was cold and unsettling, devoid of any hint of mercy. This is not your concern, Captain, she stated, her synthesized voice eerily calm. Stand aside, and we will take what is rightfully ours. And if I choose to stand here? Ryker challenged, pressing his advantage. He moved closer to the pirate captain, keeping the frayed cable held high. The air crackled with tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. The pirate captain hesitated for a moment, surprised by Ryker's defiance. Then he laughed, a rough, guttural sound that echoed through the shattered remains of the bridge. Brave words from a cornered dog, he said, his mandibles clicking together like bone against bone. But you misunderstand. This isn't about taking what is rightfully ours. This is about something far greater. He gestured towards Ryker with a sweeping motion, his voice growing louder, more intense. The Codex holds the key to power beyond your comprehension. With it, we will reshape this galaxy. Ryker frowned, straining to understand the madman's words. The Codex, Kai had spoken of such a thing. Had it held the potential for galactic change, or something far darker? His thoughts were interrupted by the pirate captain's booming voice. Now, are you going to cooperate, Captain Ryker? Tell us where to find the Codex, and perhaps we will let you die quickly. He raised his blade menacingly. Or would you rather fight for every breath? Ryker knew that fighting these armored warriors was a losing battle. He had seen firsthand their brutal efficiency. His only hope lay in stalling for time, finding a way to alert the authorities, or even a terrifying thought pierced through the haze of confusion and fear. What if the Codex was already lost? Had he failed to protect it, and this invasion was merely its final consequence? He had to think fast, act decisively. The fate of not just his crew, but perhaps countless lives, hung in the balance. The Codex. Ryker began deliberately, drawing out each word, seeking a way to deflect their question, buying himself precious moments. It's protected by intricate safeguards. He risked a glance at the wreckage behind him. Could there be anything salvaged, anything that could aid him? Safeguards? The pirate captain chuckled, his amusement laced with mockery. Such petty defenses cannot stand against our might. We will break through them, and then you will beg us for mercy. Ryker swallowed hard, feeling the weight of their stares burning into him. He needed to buy time, a sliver of opportunity, and he knew exactly where it lay, hidden in the chaotic aftermath of the attack. Safeguards? The pirate captain chuckled, his amusement laced with mockery. Such petty defenses cannot stand against our might. We will break through them, and then you will beg us for mercy. Ryker swallowed hard, feeling the weight of their stares burning into him. He needed to buy time, a sliver of opportunity, and he knew exactly where it lay, hidden in the chaotic aftermath of the attack. With a calculated feint, Ryker lunged towards them, the frayed cable snapping like a whip through the air. The pirates reacted swiftly, diving out of his path. In that split second, Ryker scrambled towards the shattered remnants of their vessel's control panel. "Fool!" the female pirate shouted, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Playing games won't save you." Ryker ignored them, his fingers frantically searching for the access panel to the ship's distress beacon. The pirates closed in once more, their blades glinting ominously in the dim emergency lighting. He finally found it, jammed beneath a cascade of sparking wiring. His heart hammered against his ribs as he pounded at the control panel, desperately fighting to override the manual lock. Ryker could feel their presence closing in, suffocating him with their malice. He risked a glance over his shoulder. They were mere inches away, their faces masked by helmets, eyes glinting with predatory hunger. He heard the click of metal as they sheathed their blades. "Give it up," the pirate captain growled. "There's no escape for you here." He stepped forward again, an aura of relentless brutality surrounding him. Ryker slammed his fist against the access panel, finally breaking through the resistance. He activated the beacon with shaking hands, and a high-pitched pulsing sound filled the air, a desperate plea echoing across the vast emptiness of space. "You dare betray us?" The female pirate snarled, her voice laced with venomous fury. "Prepare to face our wrath." But Ryker refused to despair. A flicker of hope ignited within him, tiny but burning bright. At last, his plea had been heard. Help might be on its way. The pirates lunged again, their blades descending towards him in a deadly blur. But this time, Ryker wasn't afraid. He met their onslaught with defiant courage, clutching the cable like a lifeline, ready to fight till his very last breath. His heart pounded in sync with the frantic beacon signal. They would pay for what they had done. They would all pay. The whirring of laser blades filled Ryker's ears as he dodged a blow meant to cleave him in two. Adrenaline surged through his veins, pushing back fear with raw, furious energy. He lashed out with the frayed cable, catching the female pirate off guard and forcing her to stumble backward. The pirates pressed their attack, relentless and brutal in their efficiency. Ryker relied on pure instinct now, weaving between their strikes, parrying and thrusting with desperate fervor. This was a dance of death, each movement a gamble against imminent oblivion. He spotted an opening, a split second where the pirate captain hesitated. Ryker surged forward, using his momentum to slam into the larger man's armored chest. The captain staggered back, roaring in surprise and pain. But before Ryker could capitalize on his advantage, the female pirate recovered, lashing out with her energy whip. It cracked through the air, narrowly missing Ryker's face, but catching him across the shoulder, electrifying him with searing agony. "Damn it!" Ryker gritted out through clenched teeth, clutching at the burning nerve in his arm. He could feel weakness creeping in, his body screaming for respite from the onslaught. But he couldn't falter now. His beacon signal was out there, a frail thread of hope piercing the vast expanse of space. "Is that all you can muster?" The captain sneered, charging at Ryker again, blade glinting menacingly under the dim emergency lights. Ryker saw no escape, no room for maneuver. He braced himself for the final blow, squeezing his eyes shut. Yet, the impact never came. A deep, guttural roar echoed through the ship's hull, followed by a cacophony of screeching metal and shattering glass. Ryker cautiously opened one eye, then the other. The pirates lay sprawled on the deck, surrounded by chunks of smoking debris, their armor punctured and sparking erratically. Standing amidst the chaos was a creature unlike anything Ryker had ever seen, towering and imposing, with iridescent scales that shimmered like oil slicks on water. It emitted a low, guttural growl, its eyes burning with an ancient intelligence. The air crackled with raw power, leaving a sense of awe and chilling fear in equal measure. This arrival was far from the reinforcements Ryker had hoped for. Was it an enemy or an ally? He didn't have time to ponder the question. You are not," his voice came out as a weak croak. "Not what?" The creature glanced at him, its gaze piercing through his armor like X-ray vision. Its maw opened, releasing a series of guttural clicks and whistles. Then, it turned back towards the wreckage, extending a clawed hand towards the silent female pirate figure. In its palm, a shimmering blue orb pulsed faintly, emitting a soft hum that seemed to resonate with Ryker's own battered soul. Ryker could only stare in bewilderment. He hadn't expected this, a creature straight out of some ancient myth, its iridescent scales catching the dim emergency lights like a spectrum of shattered jewels. The air around it crackled with a power that made the hair on Ryker's arms stand on end. You are not," he stammered, his voice raspy from disuse and exertion. "Not what?" The words failed him, trapped in the throat as he struggled to reconcile the image of this magnificent being with his recent encounter with the ruthlessly efficient pirates. It was too surreal, too unbelievable. The creature paused, its immense head tilting slightly, its gaze fixed upon Ryker. A series of guttural clicks and whistles escaped its maw, a symphony that resonated within him, somehow bypassing his ears and seeming to touch something deep in his soul. Then it turned away from Ryker, its attention drawn to the incapacitated female pirate lying amidst the wreckage. With a fluidity that contradicted its size, the creature extended a clawed hand towards her. The hand glowed with an inner light, pulsing with the same blue luminescence as the orb nestled in its palm. A wave of energy emanated from it, enveloping the fallen pirate. The sparks emanating from her punctured armor flickered and died, leaving behind only faint trails of smoke. Ryker's heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of fear and awe battling within him. Was this creature a healer? An interloper who had come to claim these treacherous pirates? Or did it hold even darker intentions, its power a guise for something far more sinister? The creature withdrew its hand, the blue orb held aloft, its light bathing the wounded pirate in a comforting luminescence. A low hum resonated throughout the ship's hull, weaving around Ryker like an invisible force, whispering promises of both life and death. He couldn't decipher its meaning, yet he understood instinctively that this encounter was only the beginning, a turning point in a journey that had suddenly become far more perilous than he could have ever imagined. The creature lowered its orb, gazing at Ryker with an unfathomable intelligence burning behind its multifaceted eyes. It seemed to be waiting for something. Perhaps a response, or perhaps simply a sign of understanding from the lone survivor amidst the wreckage. Ryker swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had no answers, only escalating questions. But he knew he couldn't afford to remain speechless. "Who? What are you?" Ryker stammered, his voice catching in his throat. "Why are you here?" The creature tilted its head again, the hum from the orb growing louder, pulsating with an energy that seemed to vibrate in time with Ryker's own pulse. It extended a clawed hand, palm open, toward him. An invitation? A threat? With a shaky breath, Ryker reached out and took it. The touch was unlike anything Ryker had ever experienced. Cool, metallic, yet vibrating with a barely perceptible energy that seemed to flow into him like liquid starlight. Instinct screamed at him to pull away, but something held him rooted in place. The creature's gaze intensified, those multifaceted eyes seeming to pierce into his very core. and for a fleeting moment, Ryker felt utterly exposed, stripped bare of all pretenses. Then the creature spoke. Its voice was a symphony of clicks, whistles, and low, resonating tones that seemed to bypass Riker's ears and vibrate directly within his skull. "I am Xe'lar," it conveyed, its tone echoing with a strange, ancient wisdom. "And you are?" "Ryker," he stammered, finally finding his voice, though it sounded thin and reedy in the aftermath of such an overwhelming experience. "I'm a survivor." He gestured at the wreckage strewn around them, the mangled bodies of the pirates. Those were. He struggled to find the appropriate word. They were pirates. Xe'lar tilted its head again, a gesture that seemed both curious and dispassionate. Pirates, a designation for those who operate outside the bounds of established order. It paused, processing Riker's words with an unnerving silence. "I sense chaos in your vessel." I corrected it. Xe'lar gestured towards the fallen pirates. Their bodies were still unnaturally still, their armor dull and lifeless. The wounds that moments ago had screamed of aggression now seemed as though they were never inflicted at all. The air around them hummed with a strange residual energy, leaving Ryker with a cold knot in his stomach. He couldn't shake the feeling that Xe'lar hadn't just healed the pirates. It had done something more. "I thank you," Ryker managed, even though words felt inadequate for such an inexplicable act. "But how?" Xe'lar clicked a series of sounds, each one imbued with a depth and complexity that far surpassed any human language Ryker knew. The blue orb within its grasp pulsed brighter, casting ethereal shadows across the damaged deck. "My kind, we exist on a plane beyond your understanding. We interact with the fabric of reality in ways you cannot perceive." Xe'lar paused again, as if weighing each syllable carefully. "Your ship, it was attracting unwanted energies." Ryker swallowed, fighting the urge to question further. He had so many questions about Xe'lar's motives, its origins, the very nature of this strange creature and its power. But something in its gaze held him back, a chilling sense that some truths were best left unspoken. Xe'lar extended a clawed hand towards Ryker once more. "Come," it rumbled, its voice vibrating through Riker's bones. "I will guide you." Ryker stared at the outstretched claw, his mind reeling. He still had no idea where he was going, or what awaited him beyond the wreckage of his ship, but he knew with a chilling certainty that this encounter marked a turning point in his life. The pirates were vanquished, his stolen cargo recovered, yet now he felt as though he had stepped into a nightmare far more unsettling than anything he had ever imagined. He took Xe'lar's hand. There was nowhere else to go, no other choice to make. He could only trust in this strange creature with its unearthly beauty and the promise of an unknown destiny. The creature lowered its orb, gazing at Ryker with an unfathomable intelligence burning behind its multifaceted eyes. It seemed to be waiting for something, perhaps a response, or perhaps simply a sign of understanding from the lone survivor amidst the wreckage. Ryker swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had no answers, only escalating questions, but he knew he couldn't afford to remain speechless. What are you?" Ryker stammered, his voice catching in his throat. "Why are you here?" The creature tilted its head again, the hum from the orb growing louder, pulsating with an energy that seemed to vibrate in time with Riker's own pulse. It extended a clawed hand, palm open, toward him. An invitation? A threat? With a shaky breath, Ryker reached out and took it. The touch was unlike anything Ryker had ever experienced, cool, metallic, yet vibrating with a barely perceptible energy that seemed to flow into him like liquid starlight. Instinct screamed at him to pull away, but something held him rooted in place. The creature's gaze intensified, those multifaceted eyes seeming to pierce into his very core, and for a fleeting moment, Ryker felt utterly exposed, stripped bare of all pretenses. Then, the creature spoke. Its voice was a symphony of clicks, whistles, and low, resonating tones that seemed to bypass Riker's ears and vibrate directly within his skull. "I am Xe'lar," it conveyed, its tone echoing with a strange, ancient wisdom. "And you are?" "Ryker," he stammered, finally finding his voice, though it sounded thin and reedy in the aftermath of such an overwhelming experience. "I'm a survivor." He gestured at the wreckage strewn around them, the mangled bodies of the pirates. Those were. He struggled to find the appropriate word. They were pirates. Xe'lar tilted its head again, a gesture that seemed both curious and dispassionate. Pirates? That is, a designation for those who operate outside the bounds of established order. It paused, processing Riker's words with an unnerving silence. I sense chaos in your vessel. I corrected it. Xe'lar gestured towards the fallen pirates. Their bodies were still unnaturally still, their armor dull and lifeless. The wounds that moments ago had screamed of aggression now seemed as though they were never inflicted at all. The air around them hummed with a strange, residual energy, leaving Ryker with a cold knot in his stomach. He couldn't shake the feeling that Xe'lar hadn't just healed the pirates, it had done something more. I thank you, Ryker managed, even though words felt inadequate for such an inexplicable act. But how? Xe'lar clicked a series of sounds, each one imbued with a depth and complexity that far surpassed any human language Ryker knew. The blue orb within its grasp pulsed brighter, casting ethereal shadows across the damaged deck. My kind, we exist on a plane beyond your understanding. We interact with the fabric of reality in ways you cannot perceive. Xe'lar paused again, as if weighing each syllable carefully. Your ship, it was attracting unwanted energies. Ryker swallowed, fighting the urge to question further. He had so many questions about Xe'lar's motives, its origins, the very nature of this strange creature and its power. But something in its gaze held him back, a chilling sense that some truths were best left unspoken. Xe'lar extended a clawed hand towards Ryker once more. Come, it rumbled, its voice vibrating through Riker's bones. I will guide you. Ryker stared at the outstretched claw, his mind reeling. He still had no idea where he was going or what awaited him beyond the wreckage of his ship, but he knew with a chilling certainty that this encounter marked a turning point in his life. The pirates were vanquished, his stolen cargo recovered, yet now he felt as though he had stepped into a nightmare far more unsettling than anything he had ever imagined. He took Xe'lar's hand. There was nowhere else to go, no other choice to make. He could only trust in this strange creature with its unearthly beauty and the promise of an unknown destiny. The cool, metallic touch of Xe'lar's hand sent a shiver down Riker's spine. It wasn't an unpleasant sensation, more like liquid starlight flowing into him, leaving a tingling residue that seemed to heighten his senses. He followed Xe'lar's gaze as it swept across the devastation of the deck. Bodies, still and lifeless, lay among the scattered cargo and broken rigging. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the rhythmic sigh of the ship's engines struggling to maintain course. What happened? Ryker whispered, his voice raspy from disuse. Those pirates, it looked like. He trailed off, unable to bring himself to finish the thought. It was too horrific even to imagine. Their aggression destabilized the ship's energy field, Xe'lar explained, its voice a symphony of clicks, whistles, and resonating tones that seemed to echo within Riker's skull. My presence stabilized it. The pirates were casualties of their own recklessness. Ryker frowned. Xe'lar's words were carefully chosen, devoid of any emotional response. Did it even feel anything? He imagined the creature capable of unimaginable power, able to manipulate energy and reality itself, yet here he was, talking about pirates as if they were mere insects crushed underfoot. And your presence, Ryker gestured vaguely, did you come here for something specific? Or were the pirates just an unfortunate accident? Xe'lar's multifaceted eyes seemed to flicker with a faint, unreadable light. My interests lie in the preservation of balance within this universe. It paused, its gaze fixated on Ryker for a moment that stretched into an eternity. You are an outlier, a disruption. Ryker felt a cold sweat prickle at his temples. He hadn't intentionally sought out trouble. He hadn't wanted to be involved in any of this. He just wanted to get home. An outlier? He stammered. But how? All I am, he paused, struggling to articulate the pointlessness of it all. Just a smuggler. A low hum emanated from the blue orb clutched within Xe'lar's hand. It pulsed brighter, bathing Ryker in an otherworldly light that felt simultaneously stimulating and unsettling. Smugglers, Xe'lar echoed, its voice taking on a new dimension, deal with more than just goods. They move secrets, emotions, ideas. Its gaze bore into him with unwavering intensity. You possess potential. Ryker swallowed nervously, his mind racing. He didn't understand what Xe'lar meant, potential for what, but there was no denying the unnerving conviction in its voice. It seemed this enigmatic creature had a purpose for him, a role to play in something far grander than he could have ever imagined. Xe'lar extended a clawed hand towards Ryker once more. "Join me," it urged, "and discover your true destiny." The wreckage of the ship was lost behind him as he followed, swallowed by the humming blue light emanating from Xe'lar's orb. He had no idea what awaited him, but one thing was certain: his life would never be the same again.